What's going on, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. Podcast time. Before we go into it, please subscribe. Please give us a review afterwards, and please share the episode if you enjoy it. It just makes the podcast go a little bit further, and the more people that listen to it, the more episodes we can do. So, podcast time. The one and only Option4, one of the biggest promoters in Denver. One has a record label called HotBoi Records, is obviously a DJ and a producer, Option4, and also one of the nicest guys on the planet. I love this guy. We've had him on the podcast before during COVID, and I wanted to catch up with him to talk about what he's up to now. He's kind of done a year out of COVID and wanting to launch the record label up again and start touring again as well. Love this conversation. Really insightful. A lot of industry talk. It was a really good one. I really enjoyed it. So without further ado, Option4. And we are live, Mr. Option4. What's cooking? Good looking.
Hey, what's up, baby? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me at my my office / coffee shop.
Coffee shop in LA whilst wearing the LA Hot Boy hat. This, if anybody knows Brennan or Option4, like this is like on key for. This is the most promoter thing in the world.
This is meta, is what this is, and it actually happened by accident. So no, just so you know, this was not planned.
This was all planned. We know this.
Planned. This was the only hat I packed. But yeah,
on the podcast to talk about the relaunch of the label whilst wearing the label branded hat.
Well, you see, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all the way. And that's the truth. So, you know, you're lucky I don't have like stickers stacked on my hoodie or something right now.
Well, this is why I love you, because you always go all the way when you do absolutely anything you do.
Well, to be fair, this was an accident. So, or a lovely happenstance. It was not planned. I'm sticking to it.
Also a classic promoter.
I don't know. I'm not sure how tickets, you know, I mean, maybe there's some at the door left. I don't know.
No, the best one is when the agents hit you up and be like, did we sell out? And you're like, no, we were 2 off. Sorry. Yeah. No bonus.
We would have hit that bonus. We all wanted it, but you would not believe it.
We had that. We've had that like on many occasions.
Oh, where you sold 399 tickets and your bonus was at 400.
Yeah.
You're just like, you're like, you should have let me know. I would have just bought a ticket.
Literally, I would have just gone online and bought it myself.
Your tour manager out here buying extra tickets just to hit the bonus. Come on, let's go.
Come on, get that extra money, baby.
Oh, that's funny.
How's life?
Good, man. Staying busy. But yeah, everything's going really well. I'm out here in California this week. I've been spending a lot of time out here, just work-wise. But yeah, back in Denver this weekend, and yeah, everything's all good, man. Like, life's moving faster than it was the last time we spoke. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, we've actually done 2 podcasts before, but only one aired.
Only one can ever air, actually, now that I think about it. The first one was the most stoned interview of all time. No, should not have hit that blunt.
It really was. Snoop Dogg would be proud of you, because Jesus Christ.
To be fair, I hope you do have it recorded. One day I would just want to hear like a 30-minute tangent of whatever I was talking about at the time. I want to know how stoned it actually was.
You were so stoned that it just didn't make sense.
Oh, great. That's exactly what I like to hear.
It was great, though. I really enjoyed it.
That was the goal. Well, this time, hey, listen, we're sober now, baby. So we're all good to go. I'll be able to be making just as much sense as that, hopefully.
Are you genuinely sober, like not in all life, or just on the podcast today?
Oh, just today. Yeah, just today. This is a big life moment for me. I've been sober for about 35 minutes.
I was going to say, you're in California as well, and you're not smoking.
No. You know, everything, it's funny, everything came back to life. Everything came back, you know, to being busy and stuff. And it just like, I pretty much had just quit smoking. I haven't really done that very much. Not, you know, by like a premeditated choice. Just everything got so busy. We're back in action. It's a lot of fun. There's a million things going on all the time. So not a lot of time to smoke and ponder. I'll put it that way.
Probably a good thing, because stoned Brennan is always never the best Brennan to be around.
Well, Stone Brennan would disagree, that's for sure.
To be fair, it's always good to. It's always laughing stock when you're stoned. Let's be honest. I never forget that first time.
Oh man, that's too funny. I can't believe I did that to you. But
that was hilarious.
Pandemic, baby.
No. The first time I saw you stoned.
Oh,
can you remember?
Was that in Seattle?
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were on tour. Oh my gosh, yeah, that was the funniest. That was really funny. All I remember was it being really funny.
It was
hilarious.
I don't
remember much more than that.
It was hilarious. I think it was hilarious for us. For everybody else, apart from you, you looked like a scared schoolboy in the back of the car.
Well, it was terrifying. Pretty sure that was like the first time I ever smoked weed. That's pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah, because you never smoked. When I first met you, you'd never smoked.
Yeah, I went through like a big phase for a couple of years. Yeah. It really helped me come up with a lot of ideas and really helped me kind of like think. It opened up my mind in a lot of ways. Like I don't hate it by any means whatsoever. It's just things just got too busy and everything's back in action. So there's just no time anymore. But I'm a big proponent of weed just in general. I think it really does kind of expand your mind and or at least it did for me, help my mind open up and think about a lot of things I never would have thought of before. Some of my best ideas ever came from, smoking a joint. So yeah, I just haven't had the time lately, but I am definitely a lot more sober now than I was during the pandemic. That's for sure.
Well, I guess you just don't have any time, right?
There's no time at all.
How's it been? I want to talk about the transition from. I'm bored of talking about the pandemic, but I want to talk about.
I can imagine.
I want to talk about the transition back from the pandemic, because you started throwing parties again in June, I believe, right? June 2020.
Yeah, we opened up the right after Memorial Day. So after Memorial Day weekend, they let us open up full tilt here in Denver, and it's just been a whirlwind ever since.
How's that been? How's that been though for you guys? Because like you are literally, I know there's a handful of promoters in Denver. However, you are literally the one that kind of pretty much books the most amount of parties, and the venues that you book for are kind of the main venues in Denver itself. When you went full tilt, was it literally like we're going back to what we were doing before, or do we do more, or do we do less? Do we test the waters? How does it work?
Well, actually, we spoke about kind of like that during the last podcast. It was kind of like, what do we think is going to happen and how are we going to make it different? So I put a lot of effort into that, really. In the very beginning, it was just a matter of just getting up and running because there was so little infrastructure, no one was working. We had to hire a bunch of employees again. And, staffing was really tough. There were still people making more money on unemployment than they would if they went to work. There was these weird kind of hiccups that, were kind of hard to anticipate. But from the creative side of things, everything is different now, I think, in the promotion aspect, the party aspect, the scene in general is completely different. And it's awesome and creative. And I've been having more fun this year as a promoter than ever before. It reminds me of back in the day when I first started, where everything was unexpected. And there's all, a lot of people are like, sometimes like pre-sale tickets, for example, people aren't buying pre-sale tickets. You don't know if the party's going to be good. And then last second, everything's good. And it's like, oh, cool. You get that excitement again, So it's not as, I guess, calculated as it was before. And it's much more dynamic and a lot more new, exciting things happening just in music in general, I think, in America. So it's a really fascinating time to be a promoter and fascinating time to be an artist.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. There's some massive pros and cons, but I think having the parties back has definitely changed the scene. And also there's so many different artists nowadays. Like if you look from like before the pandemic to who's playing, who's headlining, who's what, like it's changed massively. There's some really interesting new artists coming out.
Yeah, 100%. That's the best part about it is like, that's kind of, I think when, what we saw is during the pandemic, there was all these people that, you know, were exploring with different kinds of music and different kinds of things they were playing on their live streams and different kinds, you know, they had time to sit there and create different stuff. And then when I noticed more than anything, and kind of been the biggest proponent of just, I'm sure it's happening nationwide, but there's all kinds of independent promoters now that are popping up out of the woodworks that are doing their own thing, their own brands, their own little parties, finding obscure places to throw stuff because of the fact that there's just so much more diversity in the sounds that are able to tour now. And that didn't really exist before, at least in the infrastructure of the US. So, you know, that's the best part about it all is now you've got these little collectives that are doing 100-person parties, 150-person parties, and they're booking different styles of music that you wouldn't traditionally be able to tour in a normal venue before. So it's just made everything a lot more diverse, made everything a lot more eccentric, made things more dynamic. And it's, I mean, on my side of things, it's allowed me to throw and promote a lot more shows than I was doing before, which is crazy, but the truth, you know. Now it's kind of like,
how many shows are you doing now a week?
A week? Anywhere from 10 to 15.
Jesus, that's a lot, man.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's not slowed down. Fortunately, Denver is really, really beautiful in the fact that they love music. And what we've seen is, you know, you got to give a lot of credit to a lot of the independent promoters too. Like diversity of the parties that everybody's throwing and the music that's touring and the music that's whatever. What that's done is it's allowed like this resurgence of like people that are, you know, our age, that are now finding something different to enjoy and coming back into the scene because things are interesting to them that they're not in the same venue for 10 years. They've seen a lot of the same music or whatever that they've seen a bunch before. It's like there's a lot more exploration, a lot more free thinking, a lot more like, the scene is not as homogenous as it was back before the pandemic. So that's a really cool, exciting thing that, you know, I was kind of anticipating, and fortunately it's really kind of worked out now that everything is back. It's like, you know, I'm throwing multiple shows against myself all the time, and they're all working, and everybody's able to kind of go to the shows and the music and see the stuff that they want to see. As opposed to maybe before the pandemic, it was like, oh, here's the party that I have on Saturday. Here's the party I have on Thursday. Here's the party I have on Friday. It's like, oh, it's a Friday or Saturday. Here's 5 different options. Go have fun. So that's something that I think was probably the coolest, healthiest thing about the resurgence for sure.
Do you think that's because a lot the population of Denver's grown as well?
Yeah, we got a lot of people that moved to Colorado during the pandemic. So there's obviously that. Here we are saying we weren't going to talk about the pandemic and always talk about it, the pandemic. I feel bad. But yeah, there's
I think it's really interesting for people on the promoter side. I know we've got a lot of other things to talk about, but I don't think anyone's really talking about this generally of like why, like I know I've said this on the phone to you many of times, but what you've created in Denver realistically by yourself. I know there's been other promoters in there, but like how you started, which we spoke about on the first podcast, but how you started Denver and grew Denver is really the reason why Denver is Denver now with the scene. And I know you'll be humble and say that there's other people involved in that, which of course there is. However, you are one of the main reasons why that is there. But I think by doing, like, let's say, for instance, before the pandemic, 5-6 shows a week, and now doing double that, even 3 times that sometimes, and them all selling really well, and they're like, that's mad. I don't even think you get that in a major city.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, that's it. It's kind of an anomaly for sure. But there's, you know, like I said, the reason is because people have become so much more diverse in their tastes after being locked down. I mean, I think that's probably that's got to be, at least in my mind, the biggest reason for sure. And, you know, the other thing is there's once you identify kind of like, okay, this group of people, there's need and desire for this style of music, and there's need and desire for this style of music. Like, it's, you know, I think when you have a smaller market, it's very homogenous. It's like, if you like underground music, you're going to like everything from, you know, whatever, maybe even mainstream, you know, if for example, hypothetically, you just pick a city, say it's Indianapolis or something like that, not, you know, whatever. underground there is going to be a little bit more mainstream than what would be, you know, underground in New York or Miami, just because of the rarity of the event, right? So in Denver, you know, we've had obviously a very long history with electronic music. And so now everything's a free-for-all. There's so many more promoters, so many more people doing parties, so many people exposing different kind of music to people. And that just makes everything better. Like the strength of a scene is not one person running the scene. The strength of a scene is when there's multiple entities all contributing their voice, whether that's this warehouse techno party to this garage party or this breaks party or this, like, you know, mainstream EDM festival, whatever it is, it's all part of the bigger picture where, you know, electronic music is being consumed more than almost any other genre.
Well, I think realistically, I totally agree with you. But I think also, like, by doing that, and I fucking go on about this every time on this podcast, and I think people are probably bored of it, but it's about creating community. And the more people that are building small communities adds to the greater community of a city for dance music, for culture. And I think if, like you said, coming out of the pandemic and you have multiple promoters doing multiple parties, you're doing all your parties, there's more population in the city, in the state, like it just adds more for everyone, and it allows more space to be more creative and not just go, you know what, I need to sell a club out tonight, like let's book the list of 10 headliners that always sells out. Like, we can do that in one club, but because there's a scene, we can book like some like super cool Detroit act, and like super underground, or someone from the UK that's like popping off in the UK but doesn't play in America at all. Like, it allows you to do that, and then by doing that, you also give the scene a whole, I guess, without sounding condescending, but a whole new education of music, and it allows people to experience new experiences, new DJs, new sounds, without, and you not having to worry to sell out the party, because you can do that on other parties, right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah, what you're saying is correct in a lot of ways, but the other thing is, like, you know, everything upstreams, right? Yeah. So the bigger the big stuff gets, the more offshoots and the more alternative stuff can grow too. Like the most, I think, you know, at least when I talk to other promoters and stuff, or when I'm whatever, the most like painful thing or negative thing you can do to a city is when you try to compete with other promoters. Yeah. It's a really hard concept for certain promoters to grasp, especially when they're independent, especially when they're first starting out, because they think, oh, somebody's going to the other party and they're not coming to my party. Yeah. And, you know, when that mentality starts to grow, or you fester that mentality, the only thing that does in a community is allow nothing to grow. Yeah. And that's why a lot of scenes have a hard time starting. Somebody will get something going and they've got their own thing. Somebody starts their own thing, and then all of a sudden there's this like there's this fear, you know, that that's not contributing to the greater voice. But man, I'll tell you this much right now, like the second that they stop competing, the better everything will be. You know, communication's key. Figure out different ways of booking different stuff. I mean, you know, the problem with I think the history of electronic music is, you know, especially like old people like me, you know, they feel very protective about the music they found in the 90s. You know, they're like, oh my gosh, like it was so much harder to go to this rave and I had to know somebody, and now it's not the same. It's not blur. Like I didn't, you know, this old kind of stupid mentality is what allows people to feel really passionate about it, but B, very protective of what they feel like the scene should look like or feel like, or music should be experienced, right? And so you always have those people, like the get off my lawn people. Like there's so many in Denver. It's funny because we have a long history here, but they'll be mad that, like, you know, these kids are banging out to tech house, having the time of their lives, and not looking at it, sitting there saying, man, look at that party is bumping and the energy is really engaged. And those kids are having their all new experience, as opposed to the person that's sitting there going like, well, you know, so-and-so would, you know, Frankie Knuckles would be mad right now. That's not house music. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And if Frankie were alive looking at that party, he'd be like, dude, that energy is fire. And those kids are enjoying it. So, you know, the as everything grows, you know, it's all one big cycle for sure. But the more that people learn the diversity in the scene is the strength of a scene. The more promoters understand that, the faster everything will grow. And it's a difficult concept to get across. But
when did you learn that?
I learned it actually as a DJ.
Yeah.
I learned it as a DJ. I learned it like a long time ago. Because the same thing applies to the DJ. Like most parties, they start with like somebody wants to throw the party, and they throw the party and they play the party, right? But I didn't start seeing growth, and I didn't start seeing like expansion and numbers on my own end and everything else on my artist side of things start to flourish in Denver until I stopped playing my party.
Yeah.
And I use those good slots to help other artists get bigger and get their followings, you know, like you cap it. If you're the only one playing the party, like you're the direct support every time, or you're the headliner every time, you're capped. Your ceiling is this big because now it can be a great party and a lot of fun. A lot of people do it and it's all well and good. But until I removed myself from the equation and started promoting other artists to play my party, that's when things started to grow, because those people started to throw their parties and all these other people started to come up, and then all of a sudden they're getting real fans because they're not playing from 9 to 10 when there's 3 of their friends there in the room. So, you know, understanding that helped me kind of understand when it came to promoting too, what happens if there's other promoters, what happens if there's other people throwing parties. It's like the idea is to let that flourish. And then in the end, you know, the strength of the scene will just continue to grow.
No, I like that a lot. It's really important. And I think it's, as an artist, it's very easy to go, like I had it recently where we got booked for a show. And then in the same city, like a bigger artist announced a show on the same night. And it's very easy to go, fuck's sake, like we were gonna sell out and now we're probably not. But taking your kind of look at it, it's like, well, actually it's still going to be a fucking good party. And you might find people that have never seen me play, that have seen the other artists play multiple times, that want to come to my show, and vice versa. And I think there's also that look is like, well, there's younger people that haven't been to any of the shows and they might go to both. You never know. But I find it's very easy to look at the negatives straight away, but kind of being able to switch it and take the positives out of it is definitely a nicer thing, and kind of sets you in a nicer frame of mind going into the show.
Well, you know, a lot of the answer though is it doesn't matter if there's a bigger party across the street. Those people that chose to come to your party, they chose to come to your party.
Yeah.
That's not mixed in with just a bunch of people that were like, this is the only option to go out tonight.
Yeah.
Right. So that energy is going to be, they chose you, you know, they chose. So it compounds itself into usually being a better party, you know. It's like when people make that conscientious choice, they're going to be a lot more excited about the event. There's very few people, at least in my experience, that are sitting there going, oh shit, like I bought this ticket for this artist I wanted to see, and now somebody else gets announced. I'm selling my ticket because I have to go over here. I don't see that very often. That's actually a very small minority of ticket sales, at least that I can see in Denver.
Well, I think also a lot of people just buy both and then work out what they want to do on the night. It used to be like
there's
that.
Also, it's not too hard to sell tickets either. So there's the resale market of everything as well. So
totally.
I think it's definitely, you know, the more diversity across the board and everywhere is better.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I agree. So when we spoke last time, Option4 and HotBoi Records was kind of on a sabbatical. You were kind of like weren't sure what to do because of what was going on with COVID. I sat down on the phone with you the other day and that's changed. So what's the plan?
Oh man. Well, I'm not smoking anymore, so the hiatus is a little over. Like I'm working on a bunch of stuff now. I finally kind of have everything Denver back to where it was before, in the sense of like I can start focusing on the creative side of things. I was just really focused on trying to be a good promoter. I thought that was the most important thing. Like I thought it would be weird if everything opened back up and then I was just gone for another year touring and wasn't really at my parties and wasn't, wasn't seeing how things were working and working with all the other artists too. So I was able to stay home for like a year. It's July now, and work on a bunch of new venues in Denver, work on a bunch of new concepts, work on a bunch of new, just reinvigoration for being a promoter. And now it's kind of like, okay, cool. The infrastructure is there. Yeah. Everything's getting booked so far out. Like, we were announcing shows like with 3 days notice before a year ago. We'd be like, cool, we got a book, come play. All right, cool. We're announcing tomorrow and we're going on sale. And, it's just so much hectic. There were times where I was sitting there going, we don't have enough employees. Like, there's not enough staff. Like, I'm going to be wristbanding tonight. And people were like laughing at me, putting me on Snapchat, like, Option4 is wristbanding me tonight. And I'm like, yep, that's what we're doing, baby. Come on, let's go. Like,
I love that though. Like there's something about that I love that I feel like is kind of lost to a certain extent, where that whole kind of like just raw spit and sawdust days where it's just like roll your sleeves up and just get in it and just do what you have to do, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, the party's got to go on. Yeah. That's the business. That's the life. That's the party. You don't want to disappoint nobody by any means. But yeah, there was a lot of that. So now, everybody's, we have a lot of people like, we got a really good crew, really good group of people that are all back in business now. And it's kind of like the industry in general is all back to work. Yeah. So it's awesome. And, I'm grateful every day that we have a job again. So now it's kind of like, okay, cool. Infrastructure's good. I can start working on music and start working on the label and start working on touring and start working on the art, like the creative aspect of it all.
So I want to talk about Option4 before we talk about the label. When was the last time you released music?
A year and a half ago.
Damn, long time.
Long time, man. During lockdown, me and Born Dirty wrote a couple records. And that was really fun. He's the best, obviously. Yeah. And we put a record out. Then the world came back and that was pretty interesting. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, it's been a minute. So I'm back in the studio again, as much as I possibly can be. And I'm working on a bunch of new stuff and that's fun. Yeah. I'm really having a lot of fun kind of like in essence with like my DJ sets and stuff now and everything. I'm having a lot of fun just being like a little bit more classic sounding, a lot more like record digging, record selecting kind of thing. Just because now that everything's back, it's kind of like, well, man, guys, what about these records 30 years ago? They still bang. Like, so come on now. Like, and it's funny because even the shows that I've played, I've been fortunate enough to play some shows like sporadically just over the last year. It's funny, these like kids and these fans are just like shazamming all. It's kind of like it's kind of similar to like how Metallica's big now because of Stranger Things. It's like that same kind of like on a micro level. Like
and Kate Bush.
Like, oh man. Yeah, like what do you know like about CeCe Peniston? Like shit's fire, right? Like that type of vibe. So yeah, like that's been really fascinating and kind of fun, and a lot of the new music is kind of definitely feeling a lot more classic sounding, and I've been much more inspired kind of by that art form, I guess, just because now that everything's back, it's not necessarily 1,000% like super popular, even though every time anybody hears any of that music, they flip out and they love it and they have the best time. So that's been kind of like the direction that I've been having fun in the studio with lately. And, sampling a bunch of old drum machines still and finding old weird funk samples and, just doing the thing. So I'm hoping to start releasing music soon.
I love that. What's your thoughts on the whole music? What's your thoughts on music right now as a creative, as a producer, as a DJ, the music that's kind of popping off right now? What's your thoughts and feelings on it?
I am 1,000,000%, 1,000,000% confirmed now at this point, my suspicions before the pandemic. So, I think there's a full-on war on independent music that's like full-on all out, and it's more evident and more apparent than it's ever been. Yeah. So, if I am going to support anything, it's going to be independent music. And so what I mean by that is now just the way people consume music, everything is an algorithm. And that's what my suspicions were becoming like before the pandemic, because I get to see things on both sides. as like a promoter, I get to deal with a bunch of different managers, agents. Like I get to deal with a lot of people in the industry. And then as an artist, I also get to connect with a bunch of different artists on all sides of the coin. And it's never been more apparent that, you know, the major labels pretty much are completely running, even, you know, quote unquote, like underground music. And so it's, you know, there's like the fine fight to be had. And that's like really fun for me. I'm going to side myself on the independent side of the spectrum. I don't, you know, I mean, the second we let algorithms be algorithms, then a DJ's job is done, you know, and that's something that I don't ever want to see that culture ever not get the credit or the shine that it deserves. So, you know, when it comes to signing records, or when it comes to putting out music, you're always going to need, like, you know, there's Spotify numbers and there's these other like ranking sources that these platforms have to allow promoters to sit there and say, oh, well, this is going to be good in my market. I'm going to book this. Oh, I'm going to book this DJ. I'm going to book this. But, you know, the problem that we face, I think, as a music industry is that selection process of who gets a lot of plays on Spotify is gatekept by a very small amount of people.
Like 5 people.
And it's literally 5 or 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
So
it's not even that. It's not even that many. Really?
Yeah. So, and you know, there's only so many playlists, and there's only so much taste involved there too. Like if one of those people are just like, this is my favorite thing, they're going to push that style of music more than they're going to push the other stuff, you know, and what they see as credible, cool, interesting quality that gets focused and pushed on all these, on the platforms. That's going to differ between those, you know, 4 or 5 people, but that's a very small amount of people to decide what tours in the US. So
what tours in the world?
Well, yeah, but you know, the difference between those platforms is they're country based, right? So for example, you look at a record that's like, you know, take Kolsch, for example. Let's take an example. His streams are out of control, but it, you know, unless you're his manager and you look on the back end, a lot of that's going to be in Germany as opposed to like how many more in the US. So that's what I meant by in the US, not just the world, but yes, in their branches across the world with the people that work at these corporations, they kind of dictate what becomes hot, what becomes not hot, what can sell tickets, what tours, where the promoters and the agents and everybody gets together and say, okay, cool, we're going to make this thing work. So it's, in a way, you know, it's more important than ever, I think, to promote, you know, independent promoters and independent artists that are not plugged into that machine to keep diversity and keep things going. Because the problem is, like, if you're an independent artist and you're making the coolest stuff ever, you're stuck in, I don't know, wherever you're wherever you are, right? You're in North Dakota, right? And you're just making the most amazing techno like ever, right? But you're not plugged and you're not in that ability to try and get your music heard. That's a really sad situation to be in. And the problem is music never moves forward. Like the fastest music progressed ever in the history of music, at least in my opinion, was when SoundCloud was free open source for like 4 years. We saw different genres and we saw better music come out in those 4 years than the last 50. And part of that was because there were no constraints on samples or ideas or whatever. And the social aspect of when people found something they could share it to their friend, that was like crowdsourced. That was like pure, you know, not, oh, we're going to constrict everything and then just make this what all these people listen to. So, you know, the more that we figure out a way, and I'm not sure what that is exactly, but the more that we promote independent artists and independent labels and independent music that's not plugged into the algorithm, the more that these artists can pay their bills, right? And continue to do what they're doing. Because the second no one can pay their bills, it's just a hobby at that point, right? And people will still do it because they love music. It's always going to be there. But I
think, I totally agree. But I also think, like, when it's at the algorithm level already, so you'll have artists with millions and millions of streams. Of course, like some of them are, oh, what was that? Some of them were like, some of the records are amazing, right? And they deserve millions and millions of streams, and they fully deserve that. But then there's also the records that just get caught on playlists, and they get put at like in the top 10 of a playlist, and realistically no one actually is listening to that record. It's just because it's on the playlist and there's millions of followers on that playlist, so it generates a lot of streams for that artist. It doesn't necessarily generate a lot of followers or a lot of people because they don't necessarily love the record. But you also have, it's also really hard to kind of, as an artist, to not look at your streams and judge yourself by your streams and judge your career by your streams and compare yourself, because you can go and look at everybody else's streams. Before you had streaming, you had Beatport charts, and although that was like, it was like the thing to get into the Beatport chart, you didn't know how many sales it took. You couldn't see any of the back end. So I feel like what's happened is that it's actually made artists create more formulaic music which fits in those playlists, because there is only a certain amount of playlists, and we can't have a go at Spotify and Apple Music for only creating that amount of playlists. Like, it's their business. They're allowed to do what the fuck they want. But if you're defining a whole electronic genre of music where you have house, tech house, minimal, melodic, progressive, like all of these different genres, and they have to fit on 3 playlists, you're like this like super creative, make fucking amazing music, but it just doesn't fit on those playlists because of the sound. Like, you're kind of fucking yourself to a certain extent if you want to make a business out of music. So I just feel like a lot of the music becomes I don't think it's a blame game for anyone. I don't think it's blaming anyone, but I think it's realistically people just start writing formulaic music, which is what we've seen in the last 6 months, especially, where you know what it's going to sound like and you know what's going to do well on the streaming wise, because it's an easy way to see success.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
like, I've got a friend, sorry to buy in, like, I've got a friend which we both know that, like, their management's one of the biggest managers in dance music, and realistically they're very good at making tech house artists big. This friend of ours left that management group because they just pretty much just wanted to make tech house. And this artist doesn't make tech house. He makes music from all over the shop, if you know what I mean. And what I'm trying to get at is, like, is there a creativity where people just feel like, as an artist, you have to just make this one sound, or this, like, not one sound, but your barriers of creativity has got a lot closer because we need success on streaming to get a touring career?
Well, I think that's the I guess the point of what I think that's the kind of the point of the 2 separate worlds. Like, you look at the Spotify, Apple streaming world, that's gonna essentially almost kind of like, it's like we're back in the Clear Channel days. Those are going to be like the radio artists. Those are the artists that get the radio plays. Those are the artists that get big touring, profiles. And then there's, no matter how big that gets, everything upstreams. That's the best part about electronic music is look at these artists now that are touring nowadays that don't make records.
Yeah.
They're just amazing DJs because there's going to be an amount of people out there. There's plenty of people out there that are not going to want what an algorithm programs them. They're going to want an experience of listening to new stuff that they've never heard before. Yeah. So that's the beauty of our community and of the scene in general, is there's always going to be that kind of like underground resistance, right? of people that want to experience new sounds and new music, and have somebody show them that and be a part of that. So I guess that's what I was saying about promoting, do all of it, but make sure that you're always trying to support and promote these independent artists that are not plugged into those situations. Book the music that's based on the music that you like, promote the
how do
music
you
that
find
you like.
how do you find those? So I'm playing devil's advocate right now. I'm kind of just like making the conversation go a bit deeper, because it's like I know people who are listening are probably wanting to know this, because a lot of people go and find music in Spotify or Apple Music, right? That's the place, or SoundCloud occasionally. But like I know you're a promoter, you're a DJ, you're a label owner. Like you have to know what the fuck's going on, right? But if you're Joe Public, like how do you go and find music when we're being fed music as an algorithm?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways you can do that. There's different platforms that are not, corporate, that are out there that provide a tremendous amount of access to different bubbles of underground music around the world. Like India, for example, has an amazing underground scene. Like, and the music is fire. Like there are different parts of the world that have these contingents of people that are making creative, new, fun, exciting shit, that is not, they have no access to the corporate world because they're in a completely different country.
Yeah.
There's platforms. I mean, you look at Bandcamp, for example. Bandcamp is so pure still to this day, which, I still think all Bandcamp needs to do is really get the social aspect of it again, and then they can make a run at some of these other things, because I think there really is a desire for it. But by, with I think the two easiest ways of finding stuff that's not fed is by finding other selected DJs and their sets that are getting streamed still. You got Horror, for example, does a terrific job. You still have Rinse FM does a fantastic job of people that, support selectors. And now once you all of a sudden you're finding out all these other artists, it's not that hard to connect the dots on these other platforms to kind of discover. But there's still like plenty of independent platforms out there that, promote, and that's what they do. That's all they do. They don't, you'll never find a record from some big name or whatever at the number one of their vinyl only charts. So, there's a tremendous amount of access there. And there's artists now, which is pretty cool. You're seeing artists like Octa and, some of these artists that are big on Bandcamp, for example, getting to, have very successful touring careers in America when they've been doing it in Europe for a minute,
Yeah.
And so, I guess my point is that, like, when you're looking and you're digging and you're trying to find, you just got to look at the other websites and the other, I guess the other website is the right word. The other websites to look for the music that is not necessarily going to be plugged. Like you look at TrackSource, for example, their top 10 is almost never the same as Beatport, right? The same exact model can be said for, you look at the top 50 or whatever is on the Spotify playlist. That's going to be completely different than what's going to be in Bandcamp. So there's a lot of, there's artists and websites, or there's websites out there and platforms out there that support independent artists before they support commercial artists. And those are really because the commercial artists are wrapped up in these deals where they support the major platforms. Yeah. So you got a platform that supports independent artists. The independent artists are going to support that. You got platforms that are corporate that the big names are supporting because that's how they get their meal ticket in a lot of ways. So, it's two separate worlds, and one's way bigger than the other, but there's just so much music out there and so many more opportunities. It's just a matter of, like, in my personal opinion, promoters, really going out of their way to support both at the same time.
No, I totally agree with you. Bandcamp is especially a very interesting concept. I love the concept of it, and it works for so many artists. I just wish they would make a better interface.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to shit on Bandcamp, but
no, I'm not shitting on Bandcamp. I think it's fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's true. You find a lot of good stuff out there. SoundCloud, if you're digging in the right spots on SoundCloud now, there's a lot of good stuff on SoundCloud still, which are still kind of like just independent people just putting their stuff out there.
What's your thoughts on Patreon?
I am very. I feel like Patreon is just supported by whatever big names there are still right now. That's kind of like the model. No offense to Patreon or whatever, but I don't know if it's necessarily collecting a tremendous. I haven't done my due diligence, so I shouldn't speak on it. But everybody that I've seen talk about Patreon is just a big artist. So yeah, it's like independent in the sense where they're promoting independent artists technically, but they're also kind of using the influencers or the bigger names to kind of be the ones that are putting this stuff on there first to try and get that fan base, which kind of makes sense for their business model. But in the end, it's like you get a bunch of big names on there. It's just another Spotify, right?
Yeah, I think in that concept is similar to like OnlyFans, right? And things like that, like where you need the influencers to promote it to get people on it, and then once people are on it, they can then go and find their artists. But it's more so not necessary. I think it's with Patreon, I think it's a great tool for independent artists to not necessarily create a following, but to keep their following, to earn money from their following, where they might not be touring so much, or they might not be touring so much, so they might not be able to earn as much money as what a bigger artist can do. So Patreon can give them a way to actually make an income, which I think is really special, because let's be honest, 10 years ago, before streaming, and there was no real income for anybody that wasn't touring at all. Because and realistically, let's be honest, like even at my level, where I'm really fortunate that I get pretty good streams, I have a good fan base, like the money I generate through music will not pay for my life. And even if I live a pretty chill life, if you know what I mean, I'm not out there spending a fortune and doing all of that, but like I still wouldn't be able to afford it.
Yeah, I mean that's the give and take of it. But to be fair, I mean, from a strictly creative side of things, just a strictly creative side of things, I don't think anything was more exciting than the SoundCloud era before they got sued by the majors. When that era of that span happened, you look at every major pop group, every major big ticket selling artist that's even half electronic, they upstream through these new genres that were created via SoundCloud. You look at Flume. Everybody wanted to make every 16-year-old with a laptop made Flume music. And then you have all these other artists that sound like Flume in that way. And they've grown on to do thousands and thousands of tickets all over the place. You look at Kate Trinata, same exact thing. You look at Chami, when Chami kind of coined and was like the front runner of a lot of that, kind of future house type sound. You look at the bass music that came out, during the SoundCloud era. Those have spurned on to create the major pop stars or whatever, the major big names that we see headlining, all of these arenas and Red Rocks and everything today. So, fortunately, I mean, I was able to watch all of that from the beginning, Kygos and all these things. I was for a minute there, it was like I was managed by the same guy as Kygo, right? So like I got to see, his rise from the SoundCloud thing go beyond what I could ever expect. And so, I guess my point is what we really, I believe, need as a music industry is we need a new platform for artists to just be completely free and independent. And when that happens, I think there's all going to be all kinds of new genres that become popular, and let the people, like what made SoundCloud so popular was the people be able to choose what's popular. Everybody would repost the songs they liked, and it just spurned into this giant crazy thing. And, with Hype Machine, the blogs, the aggregates, I mean, we saw a tremendous amount of new music get made.
It was a good time. I feel I was talking to Dan Stacey the other day, who manages Jax Jones, and a couple of other like pop guys. And SoundCloud's coming back in the pop world. So what's happening is a lot of these pop acts that are like unsigned, releasing music on SoundCloud and like hyping it on SoundCloud, and then getting signed by a major, which is kind of interesting because the majors used to hate SoundCloud, but they're actually using it as a platform now to find the new hot kids, which is really interesting because I think, like, I never look on SoundCloud for music now personally. I'm not a huge fan of the platform generally, but it was amazing. But it's interesting to see how our generation's kind of grown out, and then the new generations come through, and they're just like going ham on a different genre of music, but like and now it's a huge tool for the major. A lot of the majors now are even releasing on SoundCloud before they release anywhere else.
That's crazy. Yeah, who would have thought? That's so funny. The irony there has got to be thick,
right? like
really thick. Yeah.
They release it on SoundCloud to see if it pops off, and then if it pops off, they then work it.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. I didn't know that, first off, but yeah, I've actually, it's funny. I've actually I've been going through SoundCloud digs and SoundCloud holes and found amazing stuff, like amazing stuff that I never heard before, that I was like super excited about. And then I look at the year and it's like, oh, this is 9 years old. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, cool. It's kind of all coming together, But I do believe that, whenever the next platform, hopefully there's another platform that gets created. I think that once artists have true freedom to just create and they're not hampered by weird copyright laws, or to figure out a way of the technology to make sure that the copyrights get done correctly for whatever, I think that we'll see a resurgence when people can let people decide what's popular, as opposed to playlists and algorithms and that side of things choose what people listen to, because that's the biggest thing, is the way people consume music is now not, in the majority of people anyway. There's people that dig for music, and that's a very very small minority of people that just get fed music, and that's the biggest difference that we're seeing, I think, with technology these days, and just how the music industry is shifting.
It is interesting that there's not really been there isn't a platform that, or like an algorithm or something that actually allows people to upload music illegally, but it does the splits automatically. So I know YouTube does it to a certain extent. So for anybody listening, what I'm talking about is, if I was to put up if Option4 did a huge hit record and I was like, I want to do a Will Clarke remix and not ask Option4 about it, but I just did it and put it up, it's 99% of the time it's going to get taken down. But what would be amazing is if it just stayed up there, and in the back end, it gets all the money gets generated across, because there must be millions of dollars lost in that for every artist, right? And it's amazing to me that majors just block it and it gets taken down, rather than, well, how do we generate money from this?
Yeah, I mean, it gets a little scarier, dude. And I don't want to freak anybody else out on this podcast by any means, but a friend of mine came and showed me this software that's getting developed by this company. And you literally go on the website and you say how long you want the song to be. You say what key you want it in, what tempo, give it the major details as you check the boxes, what genre.
Yeah.
Right. And you click create, and the algorithm writes a song for you. And it sounds awesome. Awesome. It's crazy how well it's produced and how full it sounds, like in a real studio setting. And you can do that every 4 minutes. You can whatever. And the company, just to flex on everybody, was like, all right, cool. We're going to make an album, and we're going to send it to a very dope label. Send them 11 records and say, do you want this album? And the label came back and was like, who is this? This is amazing. Yeah, we love it. Let's do it. And it was a computer that made it, and so that, that's a really wild situation, because the computer will never repeat itself. It's programmed to just make unique stuff over and over and over again. Now, granted, it's a program, so it's like, eventually it's hard for me to figure out when that stuff doesn't repeat, but at least on the testing that I did with this friend of mine, we sat there for an hour making songs, and they sounded great, produced awesome. And I was like, holy shit, I could see a lot of these labels just being like, sign. Yeah, let's go. Great. What's the next one? And that is, I guess, what kind of really just triggered my mind to be like, if we don't, that's a really scary place to be. If AI starts making better records than you do, or more consumable records than you do, then what ends up happening with that algorithm is it gets, pretty wild. So,
well, I think on that sense, like, I agree, it's a bit scary, but there's a romanticism that I have.
We're always going to be human.
That we're always going to be human. And also, the AI is created by a human.
Right.
Like, it's not, at this moment in time, it's not at the level where it can do its own thing. There's still parameters in that, right? Where, although, yeah, it's unreal what they're doing, and the speed of it, I think that's the difference, is no humans really making a record in 4 minutes that's getting signed to a major. Like, barely anyone. Like, it takes us 4 minutes to turn our laptop on and scratch our balls. It just doesn't even. But like,
it takes me 4 hours to choose a kick drum, bro.
Yeah. But I think that there is something that we have as human beings that nothing will ever be able to beat that. And maybe I'm just like romanticizing that, but I do truly believe that. And like, some of the greatest artists that have ever been around, like, I don't know, Bob Marley, right? Let's just say Bob Marley, just for example. Like,
which he is one of the greatest.
Which he is, but people have recreated his sound. People have mimicked his sound. No one's been Bob Marley.
Right, of course. And I'm not saying that computers are going to, replace us by any means. It's just, it's fascinating how dialed in the AI can manipulate what is popular on an algorithm.
Do you know what I love?
That's the fear for me.
There's a playlist on Spotify called Sad Cow, which I don't know if you've seen. It's the biggest playlist on Spotify. They have playlists on YouTube and everything like that. It's like every song is like 2.5 minutes. I think it's called Sad. I think Sad Cow is the name of the record label as well. And there's like 10 artists or something like that. And each record is like a certain length, so that Spotify have to pay the full royalty, every time it gets played. And the whole playlist is their own music. They're generating millions. And what they've done is beat the algorithm, because they spend a fortune on ads to get people to play to subscribe. But by spending, like, let's just say, for instance, they spend $1 million a year on the actual playlist to get people on the playlist and listening, but they probably generate 4 or 5 million from the streams. Because each there's like, I think it's like got 2 million. Let me pull it up. It's mental. And I think that's the beautiful. I think it's called Sad Cow. Is it Sad Cow? No, what is it?
Mad Cow.
Cow. Sorry, people, that I know this is boring, but we have to find it. Cow playlist. Chilled Cow, I think.
Okay.
Chilled Cow. Chilled Cows, no, maybe.
Something cow.
They have like a bunch of them. Like, they have loads, and it's like, yeah, it's called, oh no, this is Lo-Fi Girl. But all the branding, here you go, check this branding out. It's all like anime kind of vibe. But
okay, cool.
This playlist they've changed the name of it, which makes sense now. It's called Lo-Fi Hip Hop Music, Beats to Relax and Study to. Yeah. So they've changed it. It used to be called something else. It used to be called Sad Cow or something like that. This has 6.6 million followers on this playlist. And all of the artists, they're like 2 or 3 people that just have loads of different aliases. But they've fucking beat the algorithm, because Spotify has to pay them. And they're generating so much money because it's not even music that people go and follow the artist. It's what I was saying earlier. It's just listening in the background. It's just people are people are putting it on in shops. People are putting it on whilst they're studying, just chilling. And it just goes round and round and round and round, and it generates millions. And that's the thing I love about humans, that we always find a way to beat the system.
Right. I mean, I'm not too worried about the AI thing per se, but it's just kind of funny. I guess what I meant by scary was the fact that, you know, they could dial in exactly what's going to be popular on one of these algorithms and duplicate it every 4 minutes. And then when, you know, labels sign it, that's even, it's such a, you know, that's a bummer. So
it's mad.
I think there's just an ever growing need to keep promoting independent, cool music, and however that is done, whether that's people consuming it or actively pursuing it, I'll always encourage it. Like I said, I think there's two types of people in this world. There's people that get fed their music and people that dig for music. And the digging and discovering the music is what's made all of us DJs, I guess, to begin with. You know, and that's the war. That's the fine fight, you know, one way or another.
I'll be honest, I haven't been digging for a while. I've fallen off the digging bandwagon.
That's because you write 7,000 tracks a day and you're always playing all of these records, man. You could probably play like a 24-hour original set at this point, I feel like.
There'd be a lot of shit in there, trust me.
I guess in a way it's digging. In a way it's digging for the fans because they, you know, all these records aren't out yet. But yeah, that's because you're a super producer, my boy.
Yeah, I kind of. I had this conversation with Ryan the other day, and he was like, dude, you need to play your records. Because I've like gone through a stage of where I've like stopped playing certain records and not playing new records that are coming out, and going back to like my 2008 playlist and like digging in there and playing those records because no one's heard of them and stuff like that. But it's like, there does come up. What's your thoughts on that with, as an artist, as a record label owner, and as a promoter, like for artists, how important is it for artists to play their own records?
I think with somebody as prolific as yourself, and I'm not just like, you know, gassing you up, even though I always do gas you up, but my thing is that, like, with somebody like you, when people, they want to see Will Clarke, they want to see your music, right? So I think the difference is you need to tour as two separate situations. So you either need to go live where people come see Will Clarke, the project, right? Where they see all your music and they, you know, you do that side. And then you need to be able to give them something else, you know, when they want, where it's like DJ Will Clarke. And you go in and go selector mode, and here's all the sounds that inspired you to make your music and play completely different off the wall stuff that maybe a lot of people haven't heard, where you are digging back to 2008. I think that's, you know, when you put out as you know, your discography is so epic and so big, it's kind of like people want to see you for your records that they hear and they know, you know, and you don't want to short them that. But at the same time, if you have the inkling to be like, hey, I've been a DJ for 20 years, let me go flex on the decks a little bit and DJ more the selector status, you just need to divvy it up. It's kind of like when Rufus Du Sol does their live performance, and then when they do their DJ sets, the DJ sets are not going to be, you know, an hour and a half of their own music, you know. So I think that would be, I think, something your fans would be really pumped on is being able to see both.
It would be fun.
I think that there's, like, I mean, when you've written as many records as you have and have had so many big songs as you have, it's kind of like, you know, I think that's a very tangible move, because no matter what, people are going to want to see you for your music, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to see you, like, be like, okay, what inspired your music, and showcase that too. So I think that it's a mixture of the two.
Are we going to have to bring our booty percolating again?
Well, we're gonna have to. I mean, you got to give people what they want, baby. Let's go. My booty percolate. Let's go. I think that happens to a lot of artists. I mean, you know, a lot of especially when you go live, you know, that's a thing. You can differentiate. That's why I think a lot of producers do the live thing, is so that they can still do the DJ sets and give people two different experiences.
How I'm asking for your promoter head here though. when an artist goes live, like for me, like if I was to go live, and I'm only using me for example because it's easier, but like if I'm to go live, I don't think I should be playing the same venues as a DJ as I would as a DJ, because I feel like people get very confused.
No, of course not.
But how do you scale up? Because let's say, for instance, Rufus the Soul have done the touring, they've done the live thing for years, right? And they've got to where they're at now, where they can sell fucking stadiums.
Right.
But as a touring artist for myself, and then if I was to go live, it's a whole new world.
Right.
So
the difference is this. The difference is when you're going to go live, you are bringing your own show on the road, right? You are not playing in venues that have house sound and lights already kind of built in, it's a club or see the difference between like a club and a hard ticket venue is an empty box, and the band brings their production. The artist brings their show, whether that's, their lighting directors on tour with them, timing everything perfectly so the music lines up with the visual aspect, or you're making you're creating something that you're going to be rehearsing and playing the same show across the country, as opposed to as a DJ, you're going to have the ability to mix it up and do different stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the concept there is to make sure if you're gonna bring something, you prepare something that's going to be special for the fans that have seen you already DJ before, right? But it's going to be different and exciting for something new, right? So it's got to be something that's differentiated. And the biggest thing that does that is the production side of things. So when you build your show, you're not just building out your set and practicing your music and figuring out what you're going to hit at the right times and what live aspects you're going to bring. That's part of it. The majority of it is on the production side of things. So it looks and feels and sounds different, even though they might have heard you play that song in a club before. They get to see it live, performed live, and have those differentiations, and then be perfectly timed with the actual production, which is really a very important aspect for live music. So, you're going to play different rooms that can house production, number one, right? And then, when you want to go do the DJ set, you don't play the club, because that's going to be something that's going to be very accessible and exciting to people. So, these bands, when they make that transition, it's a very big difference. You're going to be playing smaller rooms. You're going to be playing, growing that live show. And then the main thing is that live show, once it's toured, it doesn't tour again. It's done. You got to create a whole new live show for the next album or the next cycle. And that's why you see these bands, when they're really big, they'll go on tour for a year and there's a completely different show the year after, because, they take 6 months off, write a bunch of different stuff, and then the production's different and everything else gets reinvested in. But that's the biggest difference. It's more on the production aspect of it than it is, the music side, because people are coming to hear the music that you made, no matter what. Now they're just watching you play and perform it with something that's unique to those fans that they can't see in a club. Yeah.
Sounds fucking expensive.
Yeah. That's why it's really hard to, it's very hard. Bands have a tough time. That's why a lot of bands don't, when they're starting out, that bands usually lose money when they're breaking into a market or first tour.
Yeah.
And that's really tough. Even though they're selling tickets, they still don't necessarily make any money. It's a labor of love. That's why those bands and those musicians, when they do make it, you just celebrate the shit out of it, because there's so much more struggle on the live side of things, especially if there's like multiple people involved. If you got like a 5-person band, and it's not like that band is getting 5 times the fee. That band's going to get whatever the fee is that the room can support ticket sales wise, right? So 300 cap room at $10 tickets, there's $3,000 in there. It's not like the band gets $15,000 playing that show when they can only sell $3,000 in tickets. So yeah, the big thing is the production side of things, and that's why it takes a lot of these live acts a tremendous amount of investment and a preparation to go on the road and show people what their project feels like and looks like to them.
Yeah, I almost feel like as a conversion over, you almost need a couple of hit records that will suffice in selling the tickets in a hard ticket venue.
Yes and no. there's different. I mean, there's a lot of creative, cool stuff that there's ways of getting around that. I believe in the music industry, most important thing I think, as far as when you're going after it, is you leave tickets on the table. You know, you undershoot it. You everything's an investment for the next tour and the next tour, and the next tour, and then eventually things snowball to the point where you go, oh shit! Now it's like the investment is getting recouped 4 times over because of the size of the rooms and what you're getting at. But there's artists traditionally that have spent the majority of the money they make on the production. They break even. They starve for 6 months just to give people the craziest show ever. But when people have that show that's built just for them and they can connect the music, it's just for them because the production is like timed just for them. It's like a different ball game than the soft ticket venues, and it usually pays off in the long run. So it's just a big investment. It's kind of like scary for independent artists to get out on that road and go for it. But you don't necessarily need a hard ticket and like a big record to do that. Big records help, but you don't have that. There's a lot of big artists out there that have the biggest records ever and aren't necessarily selling a tremendous amount of tickets. So I think that it's a culmination of things. You need to have a fan base that is there for you, but you need to pair that with calculated moves to always leave tickets on the table and build for when you talk about going live, it's not I want to go do a live tour for 3 months this year. It's I'm doing this as a 5-year plan so that in 5 years I can start paying my bills. But there's other ways to do that too. You can always supplement the income by doing DJ gigs too to supplement stuff. So
that makes
thus
sense.
the DJ Will Clarke tour. Let's go, baby.
Talking about tours and music, I want to talk about HotBoi Records. When you launched HotBoi in, baby, nice to get the plug if you're watching.
There you go.
Go and watch.
I did this on purpose. I've been planning this for weeks.
We know. You planned this beforehand. You actually called me up the other day. You called me up the other day and was like, let's get on a podcast. You planned your outfit and everything.
I was like, look, I got one hat that week. Let's go. I know exactly where I'm going to be at.
When did you launch HotBoi? Was it 2018?
2017. Yeah. With the compilation.
With the comp. And then when you launched it, it was, there's something about HotBoi with the branding and the kind of concept behind it that I feel like there's no real other record label out there that does it as well as you do. Especially on the branding, on the merch side of things, on kind of bringing everything together as a cohesive record label, and giving fans to something to really kind of participate in the record label, even if they're not necessarily listening to all of the music. But it's almost like it's weird to kind of explain, and I'm not too sure how you've done it, but it's really fucking amazing. And
oh man, that makes me feel good, because usually I kind of feel like it's just madness and chaos.
Well, I think it always is behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's how it feels with everything. And when it's your own, it probably doesn't ever feel like that, because I never feel like any of my stuff's on point, but you get told it is, right? So you just kind of wing it and just hope that it is. However, like, I truly do mean that, like, the way you ran the record label, the setup, you had some big records, and it was almost like the record was big before it even started. Or the record label was big before it even started. You gave it this kind of look that it was like very well established, and it felt very well established. During COVID, you stopped it. Now it's time for the relaunch. What have you got planned for it?
Man, well, that was a very nice interlude. Like, you said a lot of nice things about the label. That makes me feel like maybe it is established.
It is. It is. And I think this is the thing. It's like, I think there's a lot of people that you and I know throughout COVID that kind of didn't remain current, which is super sad for me to see. Some of them being our friends. And they're now they're trying to hold on to everything by like a string, if you know what I mean. It's literally the thread is there and they're just trying to hold on to their career. And the fact that you're starting touring again and the fact that you're relaunching the record label feels completely the opposite. It feels super authentic. It feels like now's the right time. And it doesn't feel like you're trying to hold on to the past. And I don't know if I'm fully explaining it correctly or expressing my feelings correctly, but it just truly feels super authentic and like you're not trying to fit in and you're just doing your own thing, which is why I'm kind of asking you of what the fuck you're going to do with the label, because I'm really excited. Not because of like it's been a year or it's been 2 years since you've done anything on the label. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? I can't wait. Just tell me about it. If you know what I mean. That's how I feel.
Yeah. Well, for me, like I'm still, obviously, I just, with all the shit that happened and like with like the BLM movement and all that stuff last, whatever, it was like promoting music is not where I need to be right now. So that's why the hiatus happened. And now, I kind of had this, through, honestly, is people like you and just like a lot of friends and a lot of people just supported the label. So it wasn't me that created this platform. It was more like, everybody was kind of a part of this thing, which really kind of propelled it to do so well on the tour in 2019 when we did the label showcase. Obviously, you came and played, and everybody came and played. We had all these parties. It was like it was becoming a thing. With the reboot, the focus with the label is to really, I believe we have a pretty cool, unique platform. And the reason it's unique is because we go out of our way to connect with fans. It's not about the music so much as, no offense to everything, but the music is important, but it's not the most important aspect of the label. The most important aspect of the label is the connectivity and the things you can do with people to have fun with being a part of a record label, whether that's the demand for the merch and trying to make sure the drop is on time and you get something that no one else gets. And then when you do get it, you're getting other shit that you never thought you were ever going to get as a surprise. And the ability of having, access to these artists that these people love and these fans love on a level that is more connected than like a major has time to do. That's the best way to put it is like, it's like almost kind of like the service you get from a mom and pop restaurant is always going to be better than the service you get from a chain, right? That's the model I see with the label being, the most exciting part about relaunching the label. So the first release is with these kids out of Detroit, New York, this kid named Botez and this kid named Ken Kelly. They sent me, I still, even though the label wasn't open, I was still getting a lot of music, and they had just sent me a really kind email that was very polite, to the point. I opened it up for the fuck of it. I was with Josh Butler actually, and we were hanging out at the house, and I was like, "Oh, just listen." I put it on the laptop, and the first record that played was this record, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And Josh looks at me and goes, "Oh my goodness!" I was like, "Oh my goodess!" I was like, "We got to start the label back up, baby. We're getting some quality still." So like the label's gonna kick off the first release in like 2 weeks, and that's this record. It's very soulful. Obviously, I've been a lot more inspired by a lot more classic kind of sounding stuff, and so I feel like the direction of the label will be much more on kind of like the soulful side of things, but I'm really going to focus on doing my best to create fans outside of the algorithm. And that's the point of the record label. And that's the point of the parties. That's going to be the point of everything that I do from here on out. And I mean that as a promoter too. Like as a promoter, I'm working on all the big stuff, but I also want to make sure I always fund and always, add fuel to the fire of like the independent musician. So there's, with the merch that's going to be coming out, and with I'm working with Treasure Fingers. He's going to be my partner. So we're going to work on the graphics, and he's going to kind of be the visual director of things moving forward. We are going to, hopefully tell a story that's very easy for people to listen to, but more importantly, something that they want to engage with. Yeah. So there's going to be all kinds of fun fan activations. We're going to do like fun pop-up parties with cool stuff that people can just be a part of for being there. Yeah. And the most important thing about, you know, moving forward when we're releasing this music is we're going to give people good records. We're never going to sign anything that's not going to be cool and current. But I really want to try and build this bridge between Europe and America that's never really been done. There's been things that have kind of happened, but as a country, as a scene, we do a lot of stuff, but it doesn't necessarily cross over to the other parts of the world. So there's going to be, you know, releases that I'm going to be focusing on from other countries to bring them to America and vice versa. But everything's going to be on the independent spectrum. And the most important thing is that people are, you know, going to have more ample opportunities to connect to the label itself and be involved in fun activities, whether that's pop-up parties in different cities, whether that's if they text fast enough to something, they're going to get cool merch out of the blue, you know, like things that make people feel like they're part of a bigger story as opposed to just being fans or just consuming a product from an entity.
Love that. No, I think it's really important, and I think it's amazing how you do it, because you almost put on every cap, right? So you have the producer and DJ, you have the promoter, and then you have the record label hat that you kind of wear in all aspects, and it really shows on the label. And I think there truly hasn't been a label, maybe Dirty Bird did it at the beginning and throughout, and they still do. Defected do it to a certain extent, where it's almost brand focused rather than music focused. And although the music is still a big part of it, it's actually not the be all and end all of the record label, which is a really interesting way. But I think realistically, if we ask ourselves, do people care about the music as much as we care about the music? And this may offend some people, but I think the answer is no. I think people prefer to be part of a community, and if the music gets them in, but then the community helps them grow and helps them be part of something which is way bigger than the music. The music is just almost the intro to me. There's very, very, very small amount of people that get to build that. And if I'm honest, it's a pipe dream for me to be able to build something like that, where the community is bigger than the music. I think that's super important, in a way where you can bring new artists in and you can grow new artists without the artist having a hit record. And I think that's, for me as a record label, is the most important thing. And it's what happened to me with Dirty Bird, really. Dirty Bird gave me the platform, and I had Nala on the podcast. I'm not too sure when all these episodes are coming out, but Nala's on the podcast if it's not out already. And we spoke about that, where having a label that has a following, but it's a true following. I feel like there's some huge labels out there that don't actually have the following as a community. They have a following like, oh, this is, I don't want to talk shit on any record label, but let's say, for instance, All We Have Is Now. Like, everyone's like, okay, All We Have Is Now is Will Clarke's label. Like, I don't really care about, like, do we really care about everything else that's going on with All We Have Is Now? Not so much. Whereas I feel like with Hot Boy, you're creating something that feels very community driven, which is really important to me. So I like that a lot, man. I really do.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I think the community aspect is obviously something where people feel a part of it, and that's everything. But also, it's about, I think, in a way, at least for me, what I think the future of this stuff is it's experiential. I mean, we're looking at the same thing with concerts. We're looking at the same thing as the music industry in general. It's about the experience. The experience is almost more important than ticket sales or how do you put it? Honestly, more important than the music in a lot of ways. Like, people are looking for new things to be a part of and feel like they're a part of. And if, I at least for me, the focus of bringing back the label, and I don't want to give away too many ideas of what I'm working on, but the point of it all is to focus on the experience.
Yeah.
Like, obviously the music's going to be, I hope, we're going to sign some big records and help some artists do big stuff, and, use everything I can to create these platforms for these artists to gain fans. But the focus for me on the label is not the music. It's the fans. It's giving people an experience. And the cool thing about a label is you're able to do so much with it. There's so many different things. You can do merch stuff. You can do social media stuff. You can engage people with parties. You can do all of these tangible things that people can just brighten their day and have fun with and be excited about. And I've noticed even just in Denver, with just even the new stuff that I've been doing promotion wise for shows, it's night and day responded to differently than just because it's different. It's night and day more appreciated because it feels organic and it feels like something where people can latch onto something and be a part of something bigger. And that's the direction the label's going to take. And all of the antics that are going to happen over the next 6 months, I can't wait for people to enjoy. And I hope that, it resonates to where we can get back to where we were before the end of the world bit.
I think it's going to be better than then. I think the way music's consumed, way parties are happening, the way people are talking online, the way people are interacting online has changed a lot during COVID, from pre-COVID, and I think it will be even better than what it was before.
Hey man, you heard it from Will Clarke, y'all. I hope so too. If not, it's not going to matter, because it's all going to be fun and everything is going to be exciting again, which is the most important part for me.
Well, you sound excited about it, which you're always an excitable person. And you're always really positive about everything you're working on, which is nice, because so many people, I feel like you're the person that doesn't put barriers up and just kind of deals with it. Where for me, it's like, okay, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? And it's really like refreshing to hear people just be like, you just be like, yeah, this is what I'm doing.
This is what we're going for. Jumping off the cliff. Hopefully the parachute opens.
How important is it for you to have somebody on your team that can kind of help you with that and kind of see your vision and help you get to where you want to get to? Because you can't do it yourself.
Yeah, it's extremely important. It's everything, in a lot of ways. I'm really excited to be working with Ashley. You know him, obviously. He's a legend. Very talented individual, but also the label has always kind of just been like my passion project. It's always the thing that consumed me. Like, even though I'd work and I'd do everything else, it was always the thing that was in the back of my mind, where I'd stay up for a couple hours extra, working on new ideas and new concepts for everything. So for me personally, putting teams together and having people to help you can't do it without it. It's the necessary thing. But what makes it special is, or what hopefully makes it special, is when, you access that creative aspect of your mind, where you start creating new stuff that's never been done before, that gives you the passion to keep going. That I am now, not to date how much of a dinosaur I am, but I've been doing this for a long time. And now I turned 40, right? And so for me to just be in love with music still is the greatest gift that I couldn't ask for anything else. It's too easy to get jaded, especially if you're on the business side or you're on the promotion side or you're doing all this stuff, it's too easy to get jaded. And the fact that I have like a love for music still, I'm just thankful for every day, because then it's like, I don't hate my day job, right? I don't hate 90% of my life. My entire life is music. And so to not hate it and still be passionate and finally have this outlet makes me wake up every day and be like, all right, cool.
Let's do it.
What do I got to get done? Awesome. Because when I'm done with that, I'm working on this. And that's always going to be in the back of my mind. So that's the unlocking that aspect of things and having that release is more important to me than almost anything at the moment. And that's what I guess I'm most excited about. I didn't really have a lot of time last year just to get everything up and running because the behemoth is so big. But now that it's like all kind of smooth sailing and cruising, it's like, oh shit, I get to have fun with something again. And that's the exciting thing for me.
It's really nice to hear, because I think it's very easy to get jaded in this industry. It's very easy to your passion to turn into a career, into a job, and then into a career, and then it's like, well, we have to just make money out of this, and then you forget why you're actually doing it until you sit down and be like, fuck, I'm doing it. Or
why do you do it?
Or you do a show and you're like, whoa, that was ridiculous. I was not expecting that. And
exactly,
it's very easy. Like, I don't think it's healthy if everything was 100% good all the time. I think that stops the good times being good. You need the bad times. You need the tough times when you're hunkering down and trying to work out what the fuck to do. But I think if you can at some point go, yeah, I'm happy, and I'm doing what I really wanted to do, like, we're super fortunate that we can do that.
Yeah, that's everything. I mean, losing sight of that, nothing else matters. And that's a scary place to be in.
How many times have you lost sight of it?
Oh, man. Realistically.
Like, truly at the point where you're like, fuck this. I'm over it. And that could be for like a day, or that could be for a year, but like...
I think the only time it happened to me twice. It happened to me 2 times where I was like, this isn't worth it, and go get a real job and go do something else. There was a time where it was, I don't want to talk shit, but
talk shit.
There's like this big artist. I had this manager, and there was this big artist. It was like a major label thing, and they wanted me to do this remix, and I did this remix very left field, and it came out really pretty. I loved it, actually. I really liked the record. And Jamie XX liked it, which meant a lot to me. But the label hated it. And they were like, all right, cool. Well, here's your kill fee. And in the end, the reason I wrote that record and didn't do another version was I was trying to buy a couch because I didn't have a couch. And that was like a moment for me where I did it, and it paid the bill to get me a couch because I needed a couch, right? But it was like this soul sucking thing where I was like, what am I doing? Like, why? This is, it was also in the transition where SoundCloud was where traditionally a lot of my music was going out, my following and whatever, and the majors were suing SoundCloud to fuck up the game. So, that was like a really tough point in my life where I kind of had made that sacrifice artistically, creatively, where I was just like, why am I doing this? There's a lot easier way to make money, to go get a couch, get a lot less stress in your life, you know? And so that was one. And then another time was actually, it was in 2019, right before I was going on tour. We had the Hot Boy tour. We had sold out our big show in Denver for the label. It was like the beginning of the record label tour. And that was in, I don't know, March or something. I think it was March or April. It was March because it was Winter Music Conference. I had like a stress syncope seizure thing after the show. I was supposed to fly out at like 6 a.m. to get to Miami for the Miami party. And I ended up in the hospital for like 4 hours. And then I was like, I was thinking, oh my goodness, maybe I got too much going on. I'm going to die. Yeah. And I was like, I had to have this moment of reconciliation where I was like, if I keep going, I'm going to have another heart attack. I'm going to die. Yeah. Maybe it's not really worth it. And that was when everything was super successful. Everything was like blowing the fuck up. And so those are the moments that I where I was like, maybe this isn't the right thing. But I'll tell you this much right now. The pandemic probably was the greatest thing that ever happened to me as a creative, as an artist, as promoter, especially as a promoter, as a human being.
Yeah.
Because the second everything ended, I realized how much I needed it. And when it ever came back, I was going to do everything differently. So my fight nowadays, and not even my struggle, it's coming a lot more naturally, is just to do everything different. And I'm doing so many more things different and creative and fun, where I'm still able to balance it all now, as opposed to maybe the pressure cooker that I was putting myself in before everything ended. So grateful for that. But yeah, it was definitely at least two hard times. I had to kind of have a look in the mirror and be like, is it worth it? Or is it better to find a different way of paying bills? And so those are the two that stuck the hardest, I think. If I'm being honest. But hey, still here. And I'm feeling good about everything now, baby. Yeah, so we good.
No, definitely.
Dodge those bullets.
We've just done an hour and a half. I want to wrap this up.
Geez.
I want to wrap this up on one thing. I don't ask this every time, but I've started asking a question at the end just to kind of give people a bit of insight. This isn't music related. This is just generally related. If you could give a piece of advice right now to everybody or to one person, what would it be?
I used to say like, never give up. That was like my biggest thing, because eventually if you're chasing a dream, something can happen. And if you work, 9 times out of 10, it will eventually happen. It's just a matter of time. And if you can chase the dream long enough and still take care of yourself, it will eventually work out. I would say the piece of advice that I have nowadays is, man, more than anything, just be appreciative of every day. Doesn't really matter what you're doing. Doesn't matter what dream you're chasing. Doesn't matter whatever. Just be appreciative of being alive and whatever you're working towards. When it comes, it's going to be great. But enjoy the time that you are going through, whether you're building something, you're chasing a dream, or you're living your dream. Because when the world ended, and if your health gets sideways like mine does sometimes, it's really unfortunate if you're not enjoying the time and enjoying the ride and enjoying it all. If you're not appreciative and you're always grinding towards the next goal, the next thing, the next whatever, and you're not enjoying the experience, you could end up like me, in the hospital sitting there going, oh shit, I almost died. And I don't know if I was truly enjoying all the time that I spent to get there. Right. Not like anybody wants to get to the hospital, but I think that would be my piece of advice, is just when you wake up every day, try to appreciate everything that you're going through, because it doesn't matter how much the road meanders, you're going to get to wherever you got to go. And the worst thing you could possibly do is not remember how you got there when you finally get there. Or when you are there, not be able to enjoy it, because that's the tragic side of it. And I think that I was definitely on that path before everything ended, and I'm grateful to feel like that's my focus now.
Love that, man. I love that. It's a good way to end this. Dude, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to talk. Keep safe. Let me know what's going on with the label and if I can support, and if any artists that are on the label want to come on the podcast, they're more than welcome.
Oh man, you're the best.
See you very soon. Love you lots. Big love.
Love you, bro. Thank you again for having me.
Peace, man.
Appreciate you.
And that is a wrap. Hope you enjoyed it. Big love to Option4 for coming on. Keep safe. See you next time.